Hey friends, hello, and welcome back if you've been here before, and welcome if you're new. My name is Laura. I also go by my handle Lord Conda because I'm the lord of my story, courage and ambition, and I am an author and illustrator. So I get to try and figure out my time and how I want to spend it, whether that's writing or drawing. I should spend more time writing. But today I wanted to talk a lot more about my books and a little more insight into what they're about, the structure that I'm currently using, which I have a video that I posted called the my like 3-tier writing system. So how I have like my books parts chapters and my plotting, plan scene to pan scene methodology spread out between those tiers. I'm gonna go a little bit more into not necessarily like my tier system, but go a little bit more into the books themselves and the history that inspired them, some of the lore, and a little bit more into my main characters because I've always been afraid to share too much about my books for fear of spoiling, and that's not the way to be. I actually think I want to share more and see if you might be interested. And I won't spare like I won't spoil so much that the books wouldn't be fun and interesting to read. Like, not going to give things away, but I do think I've always enjoyed watching authortube or listening to authors, graphic novel artists, and they actually talk a little bit about the story and the characters. And I want to practice doing that more. So please stick around, learn a little bit more about Courage and Ambition, which is my historical fantasy novels series set in the 15th century, primarily aboard the historical Ming treasure ships. But it's a fantasy, things get weird, and we follow two women, Monyang and Sophia, who discover that they are witches in a world where magic is slowly seeping in, except that women can't control the magic that they experience, and it drives many of them into unfortunate circumstances, into madness. And Monyang and Sophia discover that they are the only two affected by this cursed magic that has entered the world. They are the only two who can actually control their magic, and they go on to discover why, as well as to rescue the lost prince. And I'm still working on my tagline, so bear with me, or my like intro phrase, my elevator pitch. I'm not ready for any of those things, so bear with me. Today we'll talk a little bit more about the books and where I'm at with them, and I'm so excited for you to be here. So get dressed, put myself together. I've got some illustrations to share, some graphics to share, and we'll knock this out for May. Hey friends! Okay, we're back. We got freshened up. We went to the get like tacos for lunch and take the puppy out and touch grass and enjoy sunlight on the face. Make sure you wear your SPF. But I also just did like a 6-7 minute recording and I ran out of space. So I've officially entered like the YouTuber conundrum. Like, that's the first time I've run out of space on my SD card. So cleared that out. We're gonna try this again. But I feel like it's a badge of honor. Like, it's one of those little steps you take, and I finally took it. I digress. So again, my name is Laura, and my novels series. So the series is called Courage and Ambition, and it is currently slated to be 5 books the way I'm writing it right now. And it's a historical fantasy series. And before I get too much into the books and like about them and all that good stuff, I do want to first preface that this is a historical fantasy, not historical fiction. I have done a lot of historical research over the last 10 years. Yeah, I've actually been working on this for like 10 years. So I know I'm kind of like recently posting online, but this has been my baby for a while. So, um, going back, I have done a lot of my own historical research for the 15th century. I find it a very interesting time period, but my book should never be read as historically accurate. So in my world, there is fantasy, but it's our same geography. There are historical figures from our own history that appear in the books, and you can think of it as like an alternate fantasy history to our own. So all that to say, this is not an academic source. There is no attempt to be entirely accurate either. I will never claim that. I have done a lot of my own research, so I am trying to be as believable to the time period as possible, respectful to the history that we do know. My new floating shelf, right here. A lot of the books on there are a lot of the historical resources that like I've used in my research, my personal research, not academic research. And I'll go over those probably in my studio tour vlog, next vlog. But this is not to be taken as an academic source. It is not to be taken as an attempt for historical accuracy. This is a fantasy, is an alternate world to our own. Although there are a lot of things that happen in this time period that take place in my books. So that's the first thing I want to get out of the way. The second thing I want to get out of the way is my series is written for adults. This is not a young adult fantasy. It's not a YA. It's also not like spicy fantasy, romantasy. So it's adult. It really should be like 16 plus, probably 18 plus in my mind. And there are instances of like sexual scenes, violence, things that are just not appropriate for a YA book. So I know YA is all the rage, romantasy is all the rage, but it's like it's not YA. A lot of adult material, but it's also not like spicy romantasy, even though there's like a little bit of spice, a little bit of violence. Well, there's violence, but I do take a lot of care to avoid um, certain types of violence like explicitly written on pages, and I will provide my like mature content, trigger warnings, all that stuff for people because there are things in there that are inappropriate for a lot of people or that may make a lot of people uncomfortable, and I will make those known. So those are the two like big things I just want to get out of the way, like get off my chest, make sure people understand before I get into more about the novels. So, um, also gonna go a little bit into my comps real quick. So I know comps is really big when you're like querying, and I don't have it completely nailed down, but I have a few comparable like titles that I think will help give the vibe. And I'm gonna pop up a little graphic here while I talk about it, but a lot of my inspiration comes from some of the more like epic fantasy type of series. So thinking like Eye of the World, like The Wheel of Time, the Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. I am a big Game of Thrones fan, so I'm gonna throw that one in there. And then there's a lot of I think quite a bit of the theme and vibe. You can even think of like his Dark Materials. Those books traumatized me as a kid. I was way too young to read those. And I'm glad I did because they have stuck with me my entire life. And so I feel like his Dark Materials has a big impact on my writing. Um, I have a lot of inspiration from anime, particularly, actually. So if you're an anime fan, you may enjoy this. Princess Mononoke vibes, like the tension between nature and mankind, as well as the um, just the oh, it's my favorite film. Okay. um, and for all my like animation nerds out there like me, if you are a fan of Wolf's Rain, I've got a lot of I think that type of vibe going on. Obviously, Avatar: The Last Airbender has got a shout out. So I'm writing a novel and I feel like I'm throwing out anime more than novels right now. Like, it's because I grew up very influenced by anime. Um, there are two more shout outs that I want to mention, even though I don't know um, that a lot of people would get them, but Neon Genesis Evangelion and Haruhi Suzumiya, those two had a big influence on the development of this series too. I'm gonna leave it there because that's gonna get too spoily. Another book I read not too long ago that I loved and I think is I think there's gonna be a sequel, but it kind of works as a standalone. The Adventures of Amina Al Sarafi, and it's by Shannon Chakraborty. I think that's her. I don't have the book on me. I think that's her name. Big fan of that book, and I feel like the Seafaring, comparable title to what I'm working on. So now that I've gotten out the kind of two big things I wanted to get out was like it's not historically accurate and it's an adult novel series, not young adult, not romancy. And I just wanted to get some calm titles out there, like, because I don't want to waste your time if this just doesn't sound up your alley. But now, like, going into more of the series. So, like I said, I've been working on it for almost 10 years, and it is featuring two female main characters. So we have two main female characters, Monyang and Sophia. Monyang is the daughter of Admiral Jung He, who is a historical figure. And the books predominantly take place around the Ming treasure ships in the 15th century. So that's the main setting. Our other female main character is Sophia, and she is from Venice, but we are introduced to her. She's in Constantinople. That's where the books start. And it's about these two very different women whose paths collide, and they find out that they're the only two who can control this new magic that has entered the world. Like, magic has entered the chat, and no one can control it. It's completely passive in nature, except for the two of them. And that is like the main kind of storyline is like, why are they the only two who can control the magic that they experience and what does it mean? So the books start off pretty quickly. Both are introduced within the first two chapters, and events. The events are like happen quick. So I'm one of those who like for the story to kind of like get started fast, and so my novels start like pretty fast. Um, And so I also wanted to talk a little bit about the lore. So in my novels, 15th century, pretty much like early mid 15th century, um, there is this like growing experience of women who have these supernatural abilities and or giving birth to disfigured newborns. And so a lot of the series really revolves around this like reaction that people around the world are having to these happenings, which for a long time were one offs. And then the book kind of starts where these um, afflictions that pretty much only happen to women and newborns are like picking up in pace. So part of the novels is like this seeping, this tear of the world where magic is coming in and affecting pretty much only women. Why is that? We don't know. And why are a lot of newborns like ending up born um, disfigured and unalive? So, like I told you, adult like dark stuff. But how are people reacting to this? What does it mean? And those who are affected typically end up going kind of like mad because here's this thing that's happening to them that they can't control, or they are at the mercy of the fear of communities, and particularly men. So, as we know, oftentimes when women, particularly, are accused of things, they're accused of things like witchcraft and ultimately violently uh, removed from communities, burned, all sorts of terrible, terrible things happening to women. And that's real history, but in the series, it's really a reaction to this complete unknown of what's happening that's happened this going across the world. So I don't want to ramble too much about that, but only people who can control these like abilities that people are, it's rare, but those who experience abilities cannot control their abilities, except for Moon and Sophia. The whole books are really centered around why that is. So I also want to go into a little bit of like the structure of the books for those who have been following me. I think it can be confusing because sometimes I'll be like, oh, like I'm working on part 3, but that does not mean book 3. So I made a little graphic. So we are pretty much looking at a 5-book series. So right now I have book 1 drafted. I printed a copy of first draft of draft 1 for myself. I gave a few copies to like family friends. And this is the version that I had a few amazing beta readers read through. I apologize to them again because looking back on it, I think it should have been titled Alpha Reader. Anyway, my beta readers, this is the version they read. So book 1 is drafted. I've got a copy in my hands, and I'm in the middle of drafting book 2. But I have it kind of worked out in my head that there will be 5 books for now. And they're tentatively titled. So my tentative title for book 1 is Crossroads, 2 Departure, 3 Immortal, 4 Ambition, and 5 Courage. I don't know that that's how it's going to stay, but that just helps me keep my sanity to have some working titles. So book 1, so in each of my books are parts, and then within the parts are chapters. So in book 1 we have actually 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. Part 1, the story kicks off in Constantinople. Part 2 is actually based in Cyprus, so there's a little like Easter egg for those that didn't beta read. So book 1 is the shortest because it's the first book. A and B, I don't know, it's just the shortest so far. So only 2 parts. I really wanted to, I think, keep book 1 structurally a little bit easier since it is technically my first novel that I've written. So we have 2 parts, part 1, part 2. And within part 1, which is based in Constantinople, that's where the series kicks off. We have, oh my gosh, how many chapters? I think it's 12 chapters right now, but there's, I think, going to be more because I did write it too short, I think, for the amount of stuff that actually happens in part 1 at rest. So in part 1, we have chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, 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 all the way up to 12. If you're noticing the GIFs on the screen, the images on the screen, that is a nod to my Notion setup. So I'm a very visual person. I'm also an illustrator. So this is my way of like using Pinterest to help me map out and storyline the different parts and settings in the book. So we'll jump through into chapter 1. So within chapter 1, this is like a little mood board of the things that kind of take place. In chapter 1, the setting is Constantinople. We meet Sophia first. Um, we know that she is a prisoner, like meaning that, you know, she's not in a cell, but she is under the watch of the Prince of the Byzantines. So why she's there, like, is kind of like the first question of the books. And at the same time, we open up with the entry of a special envoy from the Ming Dynasty coming to Constantinople. So already, chapter 1, book 1, we're like, where are we? What's going on? Why is Sophia, like, this person, like, under some kind of special care of the prince, even though she alludes to the fact that 2 weeks prior he wanted to kill, like, murder her. So chapter 1 kind of gives the setting. It introduces a lot of aspects of the books, which is sort of global and lots of characters and lots of things happening very quickly. And so I don't want to lead readers astray in the first chapter. So there's a lot that happens in chapter 1, but we're going to get through it. And so this is kind of the way my mind works, is like having the visuals that represent some of the ideas and events help me to map it out in my head. So, like I said, got chapter 1 done. I am getting ready to, or I mean, we have book 1 done. I'm getting ready to finish up part 3 of book 2. So, book 2, I'm actually looking at having 4 parts. And that's twice as much as book 1. And the further books will probably be just as much, if not more. But it's a lot to pack in, but there's a lot of content and area to cover. So geographically, my books span from the canals of Venice to the throne room in Beijing, the new Forbidden Palace. So we have a lot of ground to cover. We are not only covering the events that are happening in the world chronologically, but there are flashback chapters that try to expose some of the events that lead up to the main storyline. So okay, my puppy got upset and was barking. So it's actually kind of hard to maintain this amount of everything that's happening in only 5 books. So we'll figure out how I do that, but I'm gonna have to figure out how to do it. Okay, that was a lot. This was a bunch of just info dumping about my book. So I apologize if you made it this far. Like, I hope you're interested. I hope you're like, what is she talking about? What is going on? I need to be like, I need to know more. If you're not here, then I feel you. But I hope this was of interest to you. I hope you've learned a little bit more about my project, what I'm working on, and I'm looking forward to getting more succinct in my like, yeah, I'm not a marketer, so I don't really know how to like boil everything down more easily. So I know this was a long chatty video, but I wanted to get out of the way, like, okay, like, I'm here, I'm on authortube, I'm on Instagram, I make illustrations and I talk about my book, but like, here is a good like intro, like, here's the project, here's what's going on. And I'll dig in a little bit more. I'll be more intentional about digging in more to the story and the books and all that as I continue to learn this whole vlogging and social media stuff. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I'm really glad if you made it this far. Maybe we can do like, ooh, can we do a bubble emoji? I don't know if you've been around for a while, but the bubble emoji is like my go-to. I don't know why. It seems so magical and colorful and fits the vibes of my series. So I always use the bubble emoji when I'm like talking about my series. So bubbles it is. And thank you for being here. I would love to learn more about your project that you're working on, or if you have any questions like about courage and ambition, or the characters, or the lore, or the geography, or like the history, like please ask me. Would love to share more. And when the books are available, I hope that you'll check them out and read them. I hope you'll like and subscribe if you haven't already. My illustrations are on Instagram if you want to check those out. And thank you so much for being here. So it means a lot to me. Even though it feels so chatty, I'm like, oh, I love chatty videos. So I'm trying to be more patient with myself and generous with myself. So I hope you enjoyed the chattiness of this video. All right, well, ciao, ciao.
Remember my past, she'd be shocked at where I'm at. Baby girl, we made it up, and this is not the end. Little me would be so proud, cause I'm doing all I wanted. Got the best around me, lost my spark, but then I found